The Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century presents
Cassian Andor. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old.
Welcome in, Rebellion recruits, to the Cassian Chronicles, brought to you by the Hyperspace, podcasting in the 25th century. This is our discussion and review of the Disney Plus series Star Wars Andor. And before we get started, I'd like to tell you, my name is Jared.
Hey everybody, my name's Matt.
And Matt, we have a couple of very special guests this evening. Not one, but two guests.
That's true. And before we introduce them, I have to say, I'm really excited that both of them made it to the show tonight because I know they're both huge fans of the show and they're both huge fans of this podcast. So nothing like having friends of the podcast to talk about an amazing show.
Absolutely. Joining us tonight, two veterans of the Hyperspace podcast from the Kenobi Chronicles. Lindsey is here. And from numerous other episodes, Brian the Collector is here.
Hey, guys.
Star Wars fan.
Welcome
to the show.
How's it going?
Hello.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of Cassian Chronicles. And if the next Disney Plus show doesn't start with some sort of C or K consonant sound, I don't know what we're going to do because it's got to be, we've been lucky so far.
A lot of Chronicles. We're on a roll.
Carbonite, Kenobi, all that stuff.
So guys, Andor has just finished its 6th episode as we record this. And I think the show's terrible. I just think we're done here. We're done.
Oh, so let's say you'd be playing the part of Mike this evening. And I should address his absence. Mike is taking a Star Wars sabbatical.
Yeah.
He was, I don't even know if he finished Kenobi because he refuses to talk about it.
I mean, I don't blame him. Look, let's be honest. The Mandalorian came out and was spectacular. I think The Mandalorian in general was a great show. Still is a great show. Can't wait for the next season. Set the bar high, set expectations high, and Boba Fett came out. And Boba Fett had its moments, but generally, let's admit it, it just was a letdown. And it was a letdown for a lot of different reasons, which we discussed on our show. But then we heard that it was actually happening, that Obi-Wan was finally going to get made. And it had Ewan McGregor attached to it. I mean, this was huge. And I'm not going to lie, my expectations were through the roof because they got Ewan McGregor back to play Obi-Wan. How great is that? And that show was okay.
A mixed bag.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well,
I liked some, but
I agree. I thought that Obi-Wan had its moments, and there are some good, cherries to pick out of that one for sure. But overall, it didn't meet my expectations. So I'm going to tell you before we get started, the funny thing is when I saw Rogue One, I thought, first off, loved Rogue One. Great, great movie. One of my favorite Star Wars movies of all times. But I got to tell you, my least favorite character in the entire movie was Cassian Andor. I really, there was a lot of great things happening in that movie. I just thought Cassian, to me, he had some interest, but it just didn't do much for me. And when I heard they were making an Andor show, I was like, oh, I don't have any expectations of this being good. So I went into this with low expectations until I saw the trailer, and then my expectations went up to here. But I did go into this show, at least leading up to it, with very low expectations because I just didn't care in my mind about seeing this guy's story. And boy, I think I was really wrong.
I get that because I have a friend of mine who felt the same way. And I've actually felt that way about Solo. When Solo came out, I was like, why do we need this story? Why is this necessary? And why can't we have somebody better to play Han Solo? But Anyway, I digress.
I am on the other end of the spectrum. I loved I loved everybody in that movie. And I didn't like single him out as like being a favorite, but I just love that actor and I liked his character in the movie. So I was excited for this. And then I was just like, yep, no, this is for me. This was made for me.
Well, I also think Rogue One is the best of the Disney era as far as the films are concerned. And I thought it was an interesting concept. I mean, because, we're talking about the early days of the rebellion. Again, something we've seen, some of us who've watched Rebels, we've seen, and it's interesting, and I'll talk about this later. There's sort of a tie-in with how Rebels works with this show, because you see that the rebellion just didn't start. It was a bunch of small little different groups of people who eventually all came together to form the rebellion. And Andor is playing into that perfectly. I think it's quite an interesting show. And before we get started, I should break out the spoiler Walkman. And we're gonna do some prop comedy here. I've queued it up to the spoiler alert, and we're gonna play the spoiler alert now.
Whoa. You sure you've queued it up?
Yeah, it's right where the spoiler alert starts.
All right.
So I'm gonna play it, and we'll just get this out of the way. Here we go.
Yup, knob. Eat shop, yup, knob.
I'm sorry.
Listen, how many times? It's literally been, it's what, 2 dozen, maybe more than that.
Hold on, I gotta fast forward it. Okay.
It's all warped at this point.
Okay, that's it. Spoiler alert. There we go. Okay. All right. So we're going to be spoiling the first 6 episodes of Andor because we're going to be discussing them and plot points and stuff like that. So you've been warned. So, gang.
Yeah.
Well, of course, the show was released in a 3-episode drop, and I think that was a good choice.
I agree. Well, let's stick on that for a second because Lindsey and I had a sidebar conversation about this exact same thing. And this show may have been better served to be dropped in several episode chunks versus the one a week.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was saying, do you guys ever watch Arcane on Netflix? Anybody? No.
I haven't seen Arcane.
It had 9 episodes and it came out in 3-episode increments over the course of a few months. And I thought that was perfect, especially, and it was written that way. It was released that way. And this show feels like it was written that way. And so I agree. I feel like it should have been released that way. I think it would have served it better.
I feel like the episode breaks in these shows, some of them are almost comically anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Like,
Here,
it's
learn
like
this.
I know it's like,
He's like, can I eat my dinner? And then the
it's like
episode's over.
Andor starts to eat. Music swells black. Okay. And I believe one episode just ended with him like walking towards the camera.
That was like, I think it was episode 2.
And that's where they had the weird drum solo that started playing.
Yeah.
That seemed completely out of place. It was like,
Oh, no.
and it's like, and then the episode stops. But I think that is because, as you guys have said, this is a movie that's just been chopped into arbitrary pieces. And it's not really very episodic at all.
It feels like about 2 movies right now that we've seen.
Yeah.
I have to say, when you compare this to Obi-Wan, all right, just briefly, 6 episodes in, I think in the 6 episodes that we've gotten so far, we have, in my opinion, there's several things going for Andor. One, I think every character that we've been introduced to, even when they have just a little bit of screen time, has had some amazing fleshed out moments and some great development. Every character is getting very well developed. Even the throwaway characters for just one scene aren't just like stormtroopers being shot. There's a lot of meat to this. There's really good, solid, intelligent writing happening here and good story building. And in 6 episodes, I have a very good handle. I feel really like that I understand what's happening, where they are. The feeling of it is, you could feel it if you understand the grit of it, not just from the look, but the writing is good. And I'm compelled by the story. Although some of the episodes can kind of feel like a slog, I'm compelled and I'm in it. And there's a lot they've given me in 6 episodes in this world right now.
Okay, so
it's definitely a slow burn.
Yeah,
that's a term thrown around a lot.
Yeah, I think I'm okay with it when I wasn't so much for when it was happening a little bit on Obi-Wan. I was like, it's a slow burn. We have like 6 episodes. Why are we slow burning? There's no time.
Right.
But this has, I know it's going to have 12. So I think from the beginning I was okay with it because I was like, oh, I get to sit and be with all these characters. I don't mind that when I know there's going to be 12 episodes.
That's a good point. It's a real good point.
Okay, so we start the first episode. We begin in a brothel.
Like every good show should.
Oh, absolutely.
And they set the tone right away.
Yeah, and so we follow Andor into this brothel, and he's looking for his sister. And this is not a plot point we've come back around to.
Mm-hmm.
This is something, of course, he was kind of sidetracked by the events that followed this episode. But I mean, obviously, this is something we're going to come back to at some point. He's looking for his sister, who we briefly met on Kadani through the flashbacks. And we see in these flashbacks, Cassian came up in a very Lord of the Flies type of situation where obviously
very granola, very natural.
Well, there's no adults anywhere. There's older kids, but there's no parents. There's no adults at all.
It seems
looked like the oldest one was like 20.
Yeah, it seemed like it's implied that all the adults died in the mining accident that destroyed the rest of it. Yeah.
And we get a brief look at the giant hole that's been gouged into the planet. And so Cassian, he kind of gets set on his journey. There's a ship, and there's been a little back and forth about when this actually takes place. The people on this ship that's crashing, they're wearing separatist logos on their clothes. So a lot of people said, well, this is in the Clone Wars era, which I mean, kind of makes sense based on his age. But if you listen to the dialogue, when Harry Potter's aunt, AKA...
Oh my God, I forgot that's
where AKA his adopted mother, when they find Cassian on the ship, they're scavengers. Her and her husband, Clem, are scavengers. And they're like, well, we got to get out of here before the Republic gets here. So some people are saying this is before the Clone Wars starts, but I don't know. And
I think you're splitting hairs at this point.
Of course I am. Well, that's
close.
what I do.
Yeah,
I'm very interested in the minutia. But so if this is a Republic ship or a Separatist ship, they feel like, the clock's ticking. We got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And Andor gets taken from Kadani.
Yeah. She just straight up snatches that kid.
Yeah. She's like, come on, let's go. And it's a very weird and kind of unexplained, like every person on this ship is poisoned because they're all yellow. Like all of them are yellow. And
I'm amazed they're in one piece. That thing went down like a brick and hit the mountains.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Which, by the way, can we take a quick pause and just comment that this show, out of all of the Star Wars shows, might be the best looking show that they produced yet.
It looks amazing.
Every visual, every special effect. I mean, it looks so real. It just blows my mind away. Everything that they show me, and it started. That great ship scene where it crashed is just a great example of one of many in the 6 episodes of just jaw-dropping kind of like visuals that I'm getting fed to me, like with a shovel. And I'm happy
it feels like everyone behind this show is trying to make something that feels like Rogue One. That they're not just coasting on, it's Star Wars, everyone's going to watch it. They're making something that's actually got like really interesting themes, really interesting messages, and it like looks so good and just doesn't look like, I don't know, like
No, absolutely. And it's because I think one of the reasons why is most of it's being shot in Scotland. And you could definitely tell by the
Islands.
landscapes. Yes. And they're not using the volume at all, which, we've talked in the past about the volume being this amazing magic trick. But, when you unplug from that and go into a real environment, you can really tell, and, I think some of that is, the skill of the filmmaker who there's certain ways you can use the volume where it looks indistinguishable from a real place. I think at Obi-Wan, it started to feel kind of claustrophobic because there were a lot of scenes that were just big flat areas that was easy to shoot on the volume because that's what the volume is. It's a big flat area with there's no elevation to it whatsoever. But here, I mean, they're obviously out in the world. They're walking over these big hills and mountains, and you can just, it's that intangible thing that you can just feel that it's real.
Yeah, the scope is much bigger the way they're shooting it.
Absolutely. It's much more, like Brian said, cinematic. It's interesting. We get the flashback of Andor. The flashback portion kind of ends when he's a little kid and flying off world for the first time. And I actually thought when I saw the trailers that this show was going to be, I didn't know flashbacks was going to be a thing. I thought it was just going to progress kind of in a linear fashion, because you see Cassian with a beard and then you see him without a beard. And I thought, well, he's younger here, he's older here, but that's not the case. I mean, after the flashback of the kid, then he's all of a sudden, he's an adult. He has a beard that he shaves off. We see from the trailers, some clone troopers coming up. And I thought, well, hey, that's a flashback to the Clone Wars. But how they play into this show, I have no idea. We haven't gotten there yet. But they are definitely clone troopers. They are not, the modern Imperial stormtroopers that we know. So
all those flashbacks, it really works. I mean, just the way they intertwined them in those episodes, where it would have been boring if they had just done a story arc from the beginning with the flashback material going straight through in a more linear fashion. But they really did a nice job intertwining that with modern day Cassian.
Yeah, lining up with him being like essentially kidnapped as a child to rebellion napped as an adult. It was good.
Rebellion napped.
But what this show is allowing us as Star Wars fans to get a lot more of that we got a taste in Rogue One is that is Jared said, that genesis of the rebellion and that sweet spot of Star Wars, right? Like that good spot right before A New Hope, all that original Star Wars that we all grew up on, and just like that's the Star Wars we loved, right? And we get to see a lot of that. And what's so cool about this is that we're getting, as Jared said earlier, like we're seeing the little bits start to happen, and we're seeing and hearing about it in the show about how the rebellion started to form. And what's really cool about this show, and I really thought about this today when I'm watching episode 6, was that we're seeing a part of the Empire. Like they're showing us that the Imperials are real people, like they're actual people, and we're seeing relationships that they have. We're seeing families in the Empire. We're seeing, they're working jobs. We see them working real jobs and talking like they're, they care about their work. I mean, it's fascinating. Like the Imperial, I don't know what she is, a regent or something. Deidre.
The blonde woman.
She's very cool. But it's like, I love watching the scenes with her work and just like, you go home.
Yeah, you even see her like take a pill or something, like maybe some ibuprofen.
It's like, you go home. Yeah. He's like, we can't go home. We got to figure this out. It's like, okay, I'll stay if you stay. It's like, it's very cool. It's like, it's amazing to watch the Imperials because they've always been just like bad guys. But
they're all evil. It couldn't be anybody, but they're all just super evil. And this is like, no, this is like,
it's a job.
It's a
Yeah.
job. It's a job.
But-
And
Yeah,
that's
you're
how
right.
fricked up it is.
But that's something that I like, is that all these people are a job, but they still have scenes like in that Imperial boardroom where the old man with
Yeah.
the gray hair comes in, and he's British. Everyone's British, which is as it should be, because the Empire is British. And he comes in there, and he's like an Imperial officer you would have met in the original trilogy. He's like, okay, well, here's what we're doing. We're not going to do this. You're going over here. This is not a discussion. This is how it's going to be. And I mean, so yeah, you get the real taste, but you also still get the sprinkles of, oh yeah, well, these are the people who built the Death Star too.
Right.
So
But it takes a lot of all these normal people to keep a massive imperialist space
yes,
Nazis
And-
running.
and something that we could talk about it now, because I don't think we're really going in any particular order, but well, maybe I will save it because it's kind of interesting. But one thing I think I talked to Brian and Matt about, maybe, but that we visit Coruscant. We spent some time on Coruscant in this show, and I told them that this was the first time it felt to me like Coruscant wasn't just a collection of matte paintings and
Right.
and digital effects. It felt to me like a real place. I don't know. Again, technology has also advanced since the prequels came out. But I just think the way it's shot, it looks different, and it feels more real to me than this super bright digital glossy place that was presented in the prequels. Now it's like, and maybe that's by design. In the Republic, maybe things were bright and optimistic, and now the Empire's taken over, and it's kind of a different place.
Yeah.
And
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
go ahead, I'm done.
Well, I was thinking about, Matt was bringing up the Imperials and their kind of day-to-day life and that sort of thing. If you look at the rebellion side and the formation of that, you've got everybody from the bottom of the food chain, the poorest of the poor, up to some of the most affluent people in the Republic / Empire. Mon Mothma, Luthen. I mean, those guys, I mean, they're obviously very affluent, have great wealth and power. Well, at least they think they have power.
Well,
or
yeah, that's true.
did. But it's kind of funny how it runs the gamut, and it goes from, way out in space to right under the nose of the Empire.
Yeah. And I thought, and I'll talk about what I wanted to talk about before, because why not? The season the most recent episode, we see Mon Mothma in the Senate chamber. The first time we've been there since Revenge of the Sith. And there's like 12 people in there because this apathy has set in. Like, they're like, I'm sure people are like, well, some people are probably disheartened, or maybe mostly disinterested, because if the Emperor's running the show, then what are we doing here? And the people who still show up, like Mon Mothma, are people who believe that they could, do some good. I mean, and it's interesting. Mon Mothma's arguing for the plight of these people called the Gormans. And I did a deep dive on the Gormans today, and this comes from old expanded universe stuff that made its way into Rebels, because a few years from now, because this is 5 years before A New Hope, 2 years before A New Hope, there is a thing called the Gorman Massacre, where a bunch of these peaceful Gormans are killed by Imperial troops, and it's like it's the straw that breaks the camel's back for Mon Mothma. And she's like, that's when she basically comes out and says, and we see that in Rebels. They even mention the Gormans in Rebels. And she's like, okay, and we see in Rebels, we see the scene where she formally announces, this is the Alliance. I am joining the Alliance. I'm renouncing my imperial citizenship. And so it's cool that this little seed was planted for the giant nerds like me. She's in there arguing in the Senate for the Gorman's protection and their, whatever she's arguing for that nobody cares about because they're all looking at their data pads. But this is something this is something that comes back around. But also when she was in the Senate, that's when news broke about the imperial or the rebel attack on Aldhani. And we see that at the end of the episode in Luthen's shop. Some guy's like looking at the news. He goes, "Oh, you got anything from Aldhani? There's just a big rebel assault there last night."
Yeah.
And then Luthen's like, "Yes."
Yeah, and the 12 people that were in the Senate chambers all leave because of it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're all walking out the door.
Okay, peace out. But that's that just scene struck me as cool. Her in the Senate, because we know in 5 years the Senate gets dissolved. Because in the New Hope, Tarkin says he's just dissolved the Senate permanently.
Mm-hmm.
I think they have lots of good little Easter eggs instead of like blatant like fan service for fan service sake. They just have good little like I think I remember someone saying something about mining stuff on Jeddah, which is the stuff from Rogue One.
Yeah,
and
the Kyber.
And then they say something about Wobani, like the guy at the shop from the first episode. He's talking about bidding on the Wobani something, I forget. And that's the prison that Jin is in.
Yes, Wobani
in
prison.
Rogue One. Yeah. So I just like little like
they don't have to beat you over the head with it. They just
if you know it, you know what it is.
They remind you where you are, which
and it feels like it's like ringing it feels like it's like ringing a very subtle countdown for Cassian. Like this is always going to lead somewhere for him. Like even what's his name? Lupin says it. He's like, you'll eventually die like fighting these bastards or whatever he says.
Yeah.
Like the whole show just is doing a really good job, I think, of like Rogue One always is like looming in the future.
Yes.
In a really good way.
And supposedly that's how this show will end, like leading you right up to the doorstep of Rogue One.
No, it's great.
And in turn, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'm excited to see him go from this version to the version.
Well, yeah, because in Rogue One, he seems like much more of a believer,
right?
And he's not quite there yet.
He's got his own rebellion.
But that's the thing,
it's
right?
Not an alliance rebellion.
That's the contrast, right? We've got actually, there's a lot of interesting things. There's so many cool things that happen in the show, but like we see the Empire, and they are kind of who you expect them to be. They're driven, they're determined, they're in the British, right? They're British. But what you see with the rebellion so far, the insurgents it's a ragtag group, as you guys were saying. It's every spectrum of the economic strata, and you've got mercenaries, you've got fakers, you've got people who are in it for different reasons. You have the true believers. They're all together making this thing work, and that's what I liked, and that's where I think Cassian is going, because you have like the fanatic, that kid who was writing the manifesto, who was really interesting. I thought, spoiler, he doesn't make it.
I knew it.
But
he said he'll sleep after. I was like,
oh yeah,
but
you'll sleep all right.
But like,
that alien doctor was creep-tastic, wasn't he?
Oh, he's great. That was so cool.
He wasn't even looking at what he was doing half the time.
Arms coming in from all over the place. It was very cool. But Cassian has the manifesto now, which he wrote about him in that manifesto. And I think that's where we're gonna learn a lot about like the beliefs of the rebellion, I think, from this manifesto. And that's, I think, gonna change him and inspire him. And to be fair, Cassian has always looked out for himself, but he seems to be an honorable guy so far. Even as far as protecting what he just did, as we saw in the end of episode 6, one of the team members turned out to be nothing more than a,
Skeen.
Yeah, it was just you just wanted
I really like that guy.
I did
his
too.
character.
Yeah. He was a real mercenary.
Yeah, he was.
And like Cassian is, I think, like you were saying, he is a good guy, and he feels like he's trying to convince everyone he's like the person that Skeen really turns out to be.
Yeah.
And so I feel like he does trick Skeen into thinking they are alike just because he's put this front out the entire time, but he really does care, but he just.
But it's an interesting callback to Rogue One in the beginning, where he's also ruthless and cold-blooded, and he has no qualms about taking out something that's in his way if it's going to impede him.
Well, that's what got him into trouble. That's what kind of set him on this adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
what else could he do? What else could he do though? You see him do the calculations. What can I do? And that's what happened in Rogue One. You see him like, what else could I have done?
He's like, this guy's going to get captured and tortured, and he's going to tell the Empire everything.
That's right.
Or I can just end his suffering now.
Yeah. I think Skeen may have been projecting himself a little bit on Andor too. To kind of take, if anybody had any qualms about himself, then, oh well, no, Andor is this guy. He's the mercenary because he's getting paid to do this. Never mind that he was planning on stealing the money.
Again, great writing, great characters.
Because that's something I did not see coming.
I saw Jared today and I was like, they got me. He got me just like he got Cassian.
I didn't expect it.
I was so mad.
But I mean, because I liked him when we met him. I mean, I thought he had a compelling story, and he has those tattoos, and he's like, that's a crate head, and and so him and Cassian were kind of swapping war stories, and but Cassian, I think, in that final conversation with Skeen, he knew as soon as Skeen suggested stealing the money that Skeen was not going to share that money with him. And he had already suggested that they betray their friends. So Cassian, like you said, he did the calculations and was just like, no, this has to, this is as far as it goes.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know if he was testing him at first or if he was being legit. Like, I don't know.
That's how good the character is. I think you don't really even, and now you can't really know what he was really motivated by. But it's like, did he? Okay, I guess he didn't have a brother, but was he really just out for the money, or was he trying to suss Cassian out?
That's right. But it's funny. Going back to Cassian's original problem that got him into all this mess. Let's talk about the corporation for a second. How the Empire in its early days was utilizing these arms out in the the universe to maintain their order, or at least impose their order before they took over themselves. It was actually, I thought, pretty cool.
Which again comes from settle in for a history lesson. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But in some of the earliest books they ever wrote, as kind of ancillary fiction to the movies, were the Han Solo novels that came out immediately following A New Hope by an author named Brian Daley. And in those books, since he really didn't have license to use Imperial characters, he came up with a thing called the Corporate Sector Authority. And that's something that's even been kind of canonized today with the new Disney stuff and fiction. And it's in this show. I mean, what we're seeing is part of this corporate sector where the Empire sort of let these places handle their own affairs because the Empire didn't really want to be bothered with it. And as long as they kept things in line, they didn't really get involved, which is how Han Solo could go have adventures here because it wouldn't screw up with anything that was going to happen in the movies. But that's what this is. It's part of the corporate sector. And these troops, as we see, it all goes horribly wrong. And the Empire has to come in and say, you guys are terrible, which was a hilarious scene because when that Imperial guy came in, it's like,
I wasn't even here.
And then the fat Scottish guy like raises his hand and he's like, really? But I think something's going on with Cyril, who is the I actually called him Lieutenant Douche when the
I call him
Cyril who loves cereal.
Oh yeah, we get cereal in Star Wars.
Finally. Oh my god!
But with blue milk.
Yeah, and blue noodles.
Oh yeah, he's eating blue like lo mein. I saw that too. Okay, so Cyril, what's Cyril's deal here? Because he comes on the scene, he's very buttoned up, he's very by the book, and he quite frankly was hilarious to me in those first few episodes.
Oh my God.
But like when he's trying to give the guys on the drop ship like a pep talk.
Oh, that was
And-
the worst.
And then
Great speech, sir.
he
Very
goes,
moving. Very moving.
Yeah, very inspirational. And then
Oh,
he like
God.
starts clapping.
That guy, the that
Scottish
was like
guy?
supporting him,
Yeah.
was so funny.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
so funny.
He
Oh
was
my God.
yeah, he was hilarious. I wish I could see more of him. I don't know if I will,
know.
but
I am wondering, like where any of that is going to go now.
Well, I think Cyril is, I mean, obviously he's a believer in his own cause of order, which is
Mhm.
the imperial, requiem. And so I'm guessing, obviously he's not done looking for Cassian, but I
No.
think he's going to be swept up by Deidre and made into some kind of agent. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Cyril become some kind of player in the Empire before the show's up.
I feel I'm going to predict at the end we get a scene of him just on the Death Star, and then we'll know what has happened to him. I mean, that's it's a big space moon. You got to have a lot of people working on that.
It's true.
Yeah, quite a bit.
I think you might be right, Matt. I think because I just don't see how. I mean, we don't know much about him, but where his character is now and what we know about him, how he can be brought to the rebels.
He has very important information that he still has. He stole it. He took it with him. So, I mean, they don't know the players involved yet on, at least the Empire, Deidre and her division. They don't know who's done this, but you can start to put the pieces together. And this is where Cyril's going to raise his hand and volunteer. It's going to be interesting. I think his character is going to be
Because
really
he's
fleshed
been,
out.
Yeah, he wasn't in this most recent episode, so
Right.
I'm sure there's more to come.
And I think he's not
There.
going to keep sitting in his mom's kitchen
I
brooding.
was just going to say the
And
episode
his-
before this where we just keep cutting to him sitting having
And
lunch with his mom.
I got to know
was like,
what was the uncle's name? She kept not Hondo.
No, but he's going to be somebody, and it's
It-
going to be somebody that we know.
It's
I'm
got to
sure.
be. It's got to be somebody
Be
because
like Tarkin or
Yeah.
something like that.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's going to
Uncle-
be
Uncle
Tarkin.
That would be great. Uncle Tarkin.
Yeah, he comes in
oh,
there.
no.
Young Cyril, I see you enjoy eating cereal. Yes, with your mother in the breakfast nook.
Oh no.
So I have to wonder that you just mentioned Tarkin.
Mhm.
Now this show doesn't seem, as Lindsay said earlier, to be relying on, nostalgia bait or, surprise cameos to
Right.
keep people invested. But do you think there's somebody that we're going to see that could pop up? Because the numbers are many that could.
Man, what about Krennic?
Krennic.
Oh, Krennic would be a
I
great
think
Uh-huh.
I think he would. If anybody was going to be tied into Rogue One in that regard, I hope it's him.
Krennic.
I hope
Or
it's him.
Saw. I feel like we might
Well,
see.
We know
No,
we're going to
Saw.
see Saw.
Saw is
Oh,
in one of
yeah.
the trailers.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where I never watched the trailer again after the first time.
Oh,
So
okay.
I was like, I don't want to see. So I think I maybe just incepted
Call it
myself.
rebellion.
Oh,
We'll
God.
call-
Oh, know the truth. Oh, God.
Borgullet.
I want to see Borgullet. I want to see him.
Turn your brain
Yes.
to soup.
and
I
make
wanna
somebody
see-
lose their mind.
I know. Oh, it's said to lose one's mind.
Borgullet.
Saw.
Listen, Saw Gerrera is great.
You think we'll see Galen?
It's possible.
Oh, yeah.
You know what?
It's possible.
I for 2 seconds last week when they said the engineer is coming, when they were talking about
Mhm.
he was going to come visit him on that base, and we saw that shuttle fly in.
Mm.
I was like, man, what if that's Mads Mikkelsen
Oh,
as
that'd be
Galen
great.
Urso?
Would have been great.
Yeah.
So I think now listen, this is probably a spoiler or maybe not. I don't know. Many, probably last year sometime, there was a picture leaked from the set of Andor.
I can't plug my ears. I have AirPods.
You can't escape, Lindsay. He It was of the Red Royal Guards and Mos Amida, who is the big blue guy who follows Palpatine around.
Right.
So certainly, I mean, Ian McDermott had a cameo in Kenobi. There's no reason why he can't show up in this show.
And I don't think that would be I don't think it'd be a big surprise. I mean, look, think about this. When Mon Mothma was giving her speech, the Emperor could have been in the restroom right around the corner from there, in the same building.
That's true. I mean, he's there. I mean,
so it's like, I don't think that's out of like, I don't think that, like, that'd be great to see him, but I wouldn't be like, that was cool. I'd just be like, all right, that's cool. They brought him in.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I was kind of disappointed that we haven't had that dinner with Sly Moore yet.
Sly Moore is this alien who they mentioned in one of the episodes of Andor. She was in episode 3. She was the pale blue bald woman who follows Palpatine around. She's very she was in the box with him when they had the discussion about Darth Plagueis, and he's like, leave us. And she was one of the people who got up and left. She's very strange looking, but yeah. And so let's talk. Mon Mothma apparently is not happily married.
No.
Oh no.
Her home life is awful.
And she has a daughter too. Now, here's the thing. What happens to these people? Because I mean, I don't know. Maybe she still has her family once she defects, but it doesn't seem like her and her husband have much in common politically, or even if they even like each other.
I bet he would betray her.
I thought the same thing.
I get that feeling. And the daughter,
when they're talking about in the car, he seems suspicious of her already.
I agree.
Yes.
I don't trust him. But how cool is it that all of a sudden Mon Mothma, who's always been this very stoic figure of the rebellion, it's a very regal almost person, is like a real person now. Like, she has a family that she doesn't quite get along.
She has
with.
a husband.
Her daughter is like a daughter who's like,
she has a
teenage.
She has a teenage daughter that doesn't like her.
It's amazing. Like, Mon Mothma in just 15 minutes became an amazingly real person.
But
finally,
interesting how this show kind of seamlessly switches from the Highlands of Scotland to a set that looks like it's from the prequels. Very ornate. And this show cannot have been inexpensive to produce. And I like Mon Mothma's speeder too. I think it's pretty pimp.
Oh yeah, that's pretty nice.
It's got like the way
reminds me of a Cadillac or a Rolls Royce or something.
Like it's a cool Cadillac from the 70s, like a big one,
And I weirdly liked the space traffic that they were like, he's like, take the highway. I don't know why. I always see all the cars flying around in the background of these sci-fi cities, but you never see like people, I don't know.
Yes.
In the cars, just like
just talking
traffic.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it's not Anakin and Obi-Wan, like jumping all through the traffic lanes. It's just two people having a conversation. And he's like, can you please take the expressway? And I'm like thinking, what is the expressway? Aren't you just flying? I don't understand.
Isn't it all fast?
Yeah. But it seemed to me he was saying, hurry up and get home so I can get out of the car with her.
Yes.
Because I don't want to be having this conversation anymore.
I think you guys nailed it. I think he's a true Imperial who likes to be fat and happy with the Empire. Like, he's in the elite class and he's happy where the Empire's going. And even though he's not participating in it, really, he's benefiting from it. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah. And just like, you mentioned the fat and happy, I thought it was amusing I think his name was J-Hold, the Imperial guy who was over the base, who couldn't get his belt to fit.
Oh yeah.
And was there again with his wife and son.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting thing that we usually don't see. And I thought for 2 seconds, like, listen, because when they start the attack on the base, and they have the son and the wife at gunpoint, like kneeling on their knees. I'm like, listen, what? They're surely not going to assassinate a kid in the name of the rebellion. But that's the kind of places this show takes you to. And it's like the rebellion, they don't have their hands clean 100%. You know, I mean, they're doing, you know, that. I mean, they obviously didn't kill his wife or his son, but they're going these places, which just as a kid in 1977 to sit down and watch A New Hope, you wouldn't think of course, there's the memes that have come out since that Luke Skywalker's the galaxy's biggest terrorist.
Well, think about this, right? You can't have the New Republic be honorable and clean without having a little blood on its hands, right? So, and if you look, Rogue One kind of cleared out a lot of the old remnants of the early rebellion, all the seedy characters, all the ones that were doing the real, like in the trenches, dirty work,
like Saul.
Yeah, because by the time A New Hope happened, factions had already joined, and governments had agreed to participate, and like fleets had come in, and it was a much more organized, militaristic and almost a self-governing body versus this independent pocket group of terrorists working together towards the same goal. And
the victory at Scarif solidified that.
Yeah, you had to kind of clear out the old to make way for the new, because you could never present the Republic in the face that Andor creates or the face that Saul Guerrera had. These people had their purposes to get you to a place, but then you couldn't take them with you to the future, because these people don't belong in the future. These people would have wrecked the future, but you could never have gotten to that future without people like that. So,
what are you saying, Lindsay?
I don't know. Sorry.
Well,
Orglet will search your mind.
We're gonna find the truth. No, but Mon Mothma says in Rogue One that the rebellion is not comfortable with Saw's militancy.
Yeah, it was at that point, right? It was
because
going south
was
already,
like super, crazy.
Because think about this: the rebellion is a brand, and to sell that brand in the terms of we're right and we're good, you have to present yourself in a better light than what Saw Gerrera was offering. And what is going on now in the dirt level, which you said, they're holding kids with guns to their head. That's not the image the rebellion wants to put forward. So you can't take these people with you, and that's why, to Brian's point, Scarif kind of wiped the slate clean a little bit on that.
Let's talk about Luthen for a few minutes. Luthen, who is, of course, played wonderfully by Stellan Skarsgård, and pronounces Cassian Andor. He says Cassian Andor, which I enjoy. Yeah. Although he starts calling him Andor in later episodes, so I guess he's been corrected. But
you didn't see that scene where Cassian's like, it's actually Andor.
Yeah, it's Andor. it's like Lando calling Han Han all the time.
Yes,
Han. Okay, Han. So, I really liked when we first met Luthen. First of all, I think his ship is really cool. It's a little bit Millennium Falcon, but not so rotund, I guess. But the viewport is definitely very Falcon-like. And he meets and I liked when he was coming to Ferrix, which is where I guess Andor was. And he's annoyed by that guy on the air taxi.
Oh man, that dude.
Talk about just people sitting in traffic. This guy just has to sit on the bus for who knows how long with whoever just decides to talk to him. It's so funny.
I know, but I mean, that's another weird thing. There's like people like that though. Like, you're in public. Everybody, I mean, we've probably all had experiences where some person who just wants to talk will come up to you and be like, "Hey, how's it going? Man, I tell you what, this empire is crazy, huh?" But
it's true.
But I did like his, Luthen's reaction to this guy is just to kind of nod and then sort of ignore him and then go, oh yeah, oh, that's crazy. But I thought that was just a neat little touch. And then
And is he walking around with like a vibroblade the whole time?
who,
What's he
Luthen?
got? Yeah, it's like his walking stick. Then he like
And it
retracts it.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
what is that?
he has a really cool weapon. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I thought it was pretty awesome.
He's a
Well,
great
but
character.
I was-
He's a great character so far.
But
Yeah.
in his whole double life,
That's what I mean. Like and the way he acts differently in each version of himself is great.
Mhm.
Like-
Hard,
he,
like
he-
no nonsense.
he starts
Grizzled commander and a
They kind of flamboyant.
yeah.
Mhm.
he starts when he starts to put on the wig and the rings, and he starts
Oh,
to like
yeah.
rehearse his bit,
Yeah.
like in his
Mhm.
ship. And it's like, okay, although I got to
Mhm.
say he's definitely has some help from hair and makeup, because that wig is
Oh,
a lot. It's a lot.
perfectly put
It's
on.
a lot.
And you see, like, obviously he feels like he's going to continue to be the one to recruit Cassian in. You see where he will recruit him into, because I think in Rogue One, like Cassian's part of like Rebel intelligence, so like Rebel spy ops stuff,
Right,
so
right.
that you can see like where he's bringing him into all of that sort of side of the rebellion that, like you said, we don't really ever see after.
But you know what I
and-
like? I like that he has a bit of power even over Mon Mothma. Like this is just he's like an antiques dealer. That, I mean, who is this guy? I mean, he's obviously an established, socialite in the scene there, but like he kind of dictates to Mon Mothma almost how things are going. It's not reverse that. It's interesting who this guy is. Like
Mhm.
the power and like I can't wait to learn more about this guy, because we've seen a lot, but like we haven't really delved into who he is yet. So
I
I'm
do feel
really
like-
fascinated.
Me too, and I feel like that about everybody. Even Cassian, who we already know kind of more about him. Like I feel like the show's doing a really good job of showing, not telling, and like not giving you everything right
Yeah.
away. Like you have to wait and see where everything's gonna go. Like I remember in the episode where the kid who gets smushed by the workplace violation, he is like sort of like oppression explaining to Cassian, like about like what like everything, and I was like, that kind of bothered me. And then in the next episode he's still doing it, and Cassian kind of tells him off that time, and I had to like wait for Cassian to lose his patience to have that moment with it, because I was like, does the show know that came across as weird? I think I'm confident in this show that it did, but then it does. So like the same thing with Marva basically kidnapping him, and that's the whole reason this all started, is he's just trying to find his sister who he lost because she took him away. I'm like wondering if that's ever gonna
Well,
come up again.
how would well, that is interesting. So how does his sister get into a brothel on another planet?
And was
Which-
it even her? Like
Well, because they did
it's
say
just-
they had somebody from Kadani,
Canary? I think it's Canary.
Canary,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Canary.
because
Yeah.
I read it was like, because it's like a canary.
Canaria. Okay,
But I'm like, what if it's not even her? She wasn't the only.
sure, that's
I
true.
don't know. I just wonder how if that's ever gonna. It's got to. It's
It
the
has
whole.
to. It has to, right?
Yeah,
I just like that I have to. I'm like, oh, I have to read.
As long
You know-
as his sister's not Bix Kayleen, we're all right.
I don't.
Oh no,
don't
no,
think
it
so.
better not be Bix.
I would say that's a hard no.
That'd be a little awkward.
Although it's that's kind of interesting that
I thought they were leading to that though, but
well,
I did not get that at all.
no, I didn't think that, because
Oh, no.
him and Bix used to have a thing.
Right. I was just kidding.
And it's apparently Cassian gets around because there's several things
Look
made.
at him.
Well, there's several jokes made about, oh, you have some more angry husbands coming after you or
Mhm.
something like that. And but
Not only that,
Yeah.
he owes money all over town too.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
this is
does.
like, it's not what I would have expected to be the background of this character based on what we see in Rogue One.
right.
But
He's not
I like
slick.
it.
He's not like slick
Yeah.
and like a seasoned
Mhm.
soldier. He's a survivor, but he's just kind of
Mhm.
like He's nobody.
But he's taking big swings because, he's stealing from the Empire.
Mhm.
He's working in those salvage yards, and that's what, and somehow Bix is in touch with Luthen,
Mhm.
because so Bix herself is kind of an agent of the rebellion, because she has to crawl into that weird crawl space to contact him,
Right.
and say,
Mhm.
look, we've got something
That's
else you
cool.
might be interested in.
Their
That
little
reminded
codes
me of Jyn Erso climbing up at the
out of
end
the-
of Rogue One.
Yeah, you're right.
That tower.
Mhm.
What she's
There's
climbing
a
up.
lot of
Yeah.
what do you call them? They'd be like call forwards, callbacks. There's a
Yeah.
lot of that, like to Rogue One for some, and like I swear, I know we're jumping around, so I'm just gonna say it now. But when they're flying through the eye, which was amazing, and the kid is telling him he needs to climb. I'm 100% sure they superimposed Alan Tudyk's K2 saying climb.
Oh, because
Like, I
climb
heard that.
climb is the last thing K2 said
Yeah.
to Cassie.
Climb.
Yeah.
I swear.
Climb.
I swear I gotta go back and listen to it again, but I swear they put that audio from Rogue One over that.
I have to say it's interesting because he was a great character in Rogue One. Obviously, he was one of my favorites. And but this show isn't really relying on the traditional Star Wars tropes kind of to move it along, right? Like we saw, like Luthen's starship does look a lot like the Falcon in a way, but like Mandalorian made that ship important that he had, because the Millennium Falcon was an important ship in that movie base. So they made the Mandalorian ship, the Razor Crest, important in that show. They have, but there's no droids, like really for like, there was a droid in the first episode or two, but it was like small and minor, not like sticking with them the whole time. You don't have a ship that's a big part of the show. You don't have lightsabers popping in and out. So they're really relying on just story building here from the ground up, incorporating a good story with the Empire and in this universe, but they're not dragging in like fan favorite things just for fan service to like, I'll give them a ship that they're going to love, or like the group is missing a plucky droid for this invasion. Like they didn't do that for this. Like they're relying on this, like it's more honest storytelling. It's more like it's coming from a real original source, I feel. So
I have
So
a theory
Brian,
about
yeah,
that trash can droid.
I want you to tell your theory.
What's
Oh.
your
Yeah,
theory?
so
The trash can.
B2 Emo, which I got
Emo.
an action
Is
figure
that
for
really?
the other
Is
day.
that really his name?
Yeah,
Yes.
B2 Emo.
Oh, B2 emo. Wow.
Yeah,
that's
he-
fun.
The Wally type.
I love
Sure,
him
right,
and his,
yeah.
Droid
his voice,
character.
his little like stuttering.
Yeah.
What
I have
was
a-
your theory?
I have a theory that he is going to end up, his, I don't know, personality to a degree is going to be implanted or a basis for K2SO.
Oh, that's a great theory. I
Oh,
love
He
I
that.
said
see.
I love that.
something, I can't remember exactly what he said, but he said something that made me think that. I was like, that is something K2SO would have said. I was
mean,
like,
Great.
That,
And look,
that could do it.
they have to reprogram that Imperial
Oh,
droid.
yeah, we're gonna see that in this.
So
and now
do they
and now,
overlay his
I'll-
personality?
I'll add something to that theory.
Oh man, this is
that
great.
manifesto gets uploaded into K2SO.
Oh,
That's
and that like makes him like a rebellious droid.
Yeah,
Love
that's
that.
just a thought that just came to mind. But
I think
I'll-
that's very plausible.
I like it.
But well, so yes, I understand what you were saying, Matt, about they're not leaning hard on Star Warsy stuff
Yeah.
to tell a story.
I'll
But
grab my charger. I'm so sorry. I'm back. Oh, I'm so
are
sorry.
you about to run out of batteries?
I'm at 8%. I'll be right back.
Okay, K2SO, let's get this together.
B2 Emo.
Oh yeah.
B2
Run out of
Emo.
gas,
Such
man.
a good name too.
Yeah, oh yeah, B2 Emo is the one who needed charging all the time.
That's right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Okay, we good? Well,
Sorry. I needed to do
uh-oh.
it before it became a real
we had a
problem.
freeze. We had a freeze. All I
There
saw
we
was
go.
hair flying
You're
up
good.
like this. Yeah, you're good. So, but I got to say, I was pretty hard on episode 5 because I felt I felt wheels spinning, and I was like, okay, now I get it. We're learning more about these people, but this is Star Wars, and something needs to happen. And maybe that's just, 10-year-old Jared getting impatient. But
Mhm.
I will say, when they started this heist this week, and we saw those glorious TIE fighters, and we saw the pilots running in and jumping into the TIE fighters, I was like, thank you. Thank you. I that's, of course I'm here for the this is a very different way of doing Star Wars. I recognize that 100%. It's very adult. This is not something a 10-year-old kid's going to want to sit down and watch. I mean, quite frankly, it's probably would be boring for them, because there is a lot of talking, and there's a lot of story, and there's a lot of character bits. But and that's fine. I just my criticism of the show thus far is I wish for a little more balance between, listen, I get you're telling a Game of Thrones type Star Wars story here, but just remember, don't forget your roots. And this week they definitely remembered their roots,
Oh yeah.
because I think this is one of the best live action Star Wars set pieces I've seen in a long time.
Yeah.
With the eye, the whole
Oh man,
celestial event,
great effect. That
and
looked amazing.
And the build up to it was really good too. They kind of had one little,
Yeah.
meteor go by, then another one, and then a couple more, and then all of a sudden it's just on.
I know you hear this boom,
And I get it, right? Because they were trying to time themselves to get out just in front of it, so that the TIE fighters couldn't fly up and get them. And I get it. So they missed it. They missed their out.
Yes,
and I kind of like, I didn't pay attention to that part earlier, but like I got it when I saw them like finally get out of the tunnel. I'm like, oh, they missed it. That's what they were trying to do.
And I love that from the beginning. They're already behind.
Yeah,
from the beginning.
Right.
Like,
yes,
it's so the
because
tension.
The
whole
tension,
time
you're right.
Is
It was
so good.
Yeah.
Because you sort of think going in, there's no way nothing's going to go right, but surprisingly, a lot of it does go right, and there's a lot of moving pieces here. Like, you have, and I guess it was revealed this week that the sort of and we found out that Terriman was a stormtrooper at one time, and I don't think he makes it.
I mean,
No, he got
it
shot.
doesn't look like he made
Yeah.
it,
He was
but you
taken
never
out.
know.
Yeah, that's true. Same for the guy who was undercover for like
Gorn.
7 years or whatever. Gorn.
Lieutenant
You
Gorn.
don't- Yeah, like
Yeah.
I was like bummed that they both, but then like you said, maybe not. We don't
I
see
thought
them.
he had jumped onto the ship, but I guess I was wrong.
No, he got killed.
Well, because
Gorn got killed.
Yeah, you see him it's very quick. He just gets shot, but
I don't remember. I have
maybe
to go
not
back and
killed.
look
But
at
maybe
that.
not killed because he could convince anyone that he still like they shot him.
Well, I
the
was
rebels shot him.
Yeah, I was rewatching that scene, and it is there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
I know that Terriman doesn't make it, and
Yeah, Skeen
Gorn
is supposed to cover him, and then sort of does. And isn't that when he gets shot? Skeen like does not cover him.
And is this the first time we've seen like scuba divers? Cinta and Vel are like underwater. I mean, we've seen the little mouthpiece. Of course, Obi-Wan just had a big scene in the Kenobi show, but they're in like legit like wetsuits.
Yeah.
And I thought that's a little strange.
Which do you think, by the way, since we saw that, which do you think were more effective? Like the skin suits they were wearing or the moisture farmer robes as scuba gear?
Well, I think it speaks to the differences in the shows.
Okay.
Like, I don't think it would have been very realistic for them to be swimming in robes. Well, of course,
Well,
they
and
were
then
all. Go ahead.
Huh?
Go ahead.
And then they have to go run around. They're not that continuity wise, don't need to have a
Yes,
bunch of wet
they'd be
clothes
in a
on.
big, well, or you just ignore it in Kenobi and have him in a dry robe immediately. Anyway,
I know.
so
Didn't that happen in episode 1 as well?
yeah, but they were
Yeah.
still wet a little bit
Yeah.
through the episode
They
1.
got magic Jedi robes.
Yeah, they've got the, like Marty McFly has the jacket that dries itself. They have the
Yeah.
robes.
Trying.
So they leave Cinta behind,
Mm-hmm.
which we see.
All right, go on.
We see her in a trailer looking up in the sky, and there's a Star Destroyer there, which we could assume is the aftermath of what has happened.
That might be the next episode.
You know what I thought was pretty cool about it, and this is, I'm probably overthinking this, but when she walked down through the crowd, and the shower still happening, you know what I thought was really cool? I think I'm right, is that you saw the native population mixed in with the Imperials, and they were all together watching the event. And the Imperials weren't like being Imperials, they were just being people, and everyone was the same in this group, awestruck at the same time. And I think that's kind of a motif, and I mentioned earlier that the Imperials, as evil as they always are still regular people, and that this show is doing a heck of a good job bringing them down to a relatable level, which kind of makes you hate them all the more, because when you can relate to them, you're like, what the hell are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
But
they're playing cards with their
like they're real people, and it's like it also shows that these people are all tall, they're all cannon fodder of the Empire. They're all just regular people being put into these situations. So it's interesting to see what they're kind of like working in.
Like when Cassian's like, they don't think about you, they don't care about you. I feel like that's also true of like the people like the Cyril. Like he thinks he's like such a like company Empire man, and like they don't care about him.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's true, and it does a good job of kind of just some of those regular guys who are on the ground. They're not. They're not. They don't know Darth Vader. They don't know. Just like I just saw this not too long ago. It was one of the episodes of Band of Brothers, and they interviewed some of the veterans before Band of Brothers. They had little interviews with the veterans, and one of the guys was like, if we weren't over there fighting them, me and that German soldier, we might have gone fishing together. We might have been good friends, and it's not, not just like, the normal enlisted German troop was not, close, tight in with Hitler. These Empire guys are not, hanging out with the Emperor on the weekend, killing Ewoks. So it's I like what you're saying there. You're really seeing like the ground level, we see the stuff going on in the base. Like, hey, I was hoping tomorrow night we could go out and watch the event. Well, you can do that if you get that cleaned up over there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll change the roster and you go watch it. Okay. That's so like mundane, but it's honestly probably what it would be like in the Empire.
You see and Gorn like taking advantage of it, acting like he does such a good job of being undercover.
Oh, he's good.
Yeah, and
he's a good character.
I love how he turns away and he kind of grins,
Mm-hmm.
Well, I picked up on my second watch that he was married to one of the Aldani women, and so this whole time when the prefect or whatever is talking trash about these idiots who want to come and watch this crap, the whole time he's probably thinking about his wife. And
he speaks their language. Like
he talks. He goes down and he treats them with respect.
Mm-hmm.
But that's again something that he hides from his superiors, which makes him an interesting character, which is why I hope he's not dead, because he'd be a good person to have on the rebellion. So
But again, there's all these different tools and motivations happening to push the rebellion forward, and they're not all on the same page, and they're not all there for the same reason. Some are there for revenge, some are there because they're fanatical, some are there because they're just mercs. And these are all those tools and assets that the Empire uses and puts together. Which I forget what was the kid's name who was writing the manifesto. Nemec. That's what he was saying too. He's like all these. He's like, I don't hate you for being here and not being a believer, because we need this as you as an asset and a tool. And that's what the rebellion in the early stages was. It was just assembling all these things together and taking whatever motivation they needed to push forward to get the job done. And then once the job is done, they can get to a more noble stance and kind of, move their message forward in a more civilized way. So it's just kind of a down and dirty, gritty show that's just awesome. I mean, it's really fun, interesting. It's very interesting Star Wars for me. It's not just like mindless brain sugar fun. It's like, it's a real interesting story. And you know what? Take Star Wars out of it, take the familiar out of it, and you'd still have a great story happening right now. Make it some other universe, another kind of thing. It'd still be really interesting.
I was thinking that how it feels like a sci-fi show I would like if it had nothing to do with Star Wars.
Yeah, take the TIE fighters out, make them something different. You'd still love it.
Whoa. You're not taking
that was
TIE
one of
fighters out.
That was my buddy's complaint about it, though, was that this could be anything else. And that was something he had a problem with, is because it could be anything else.
I feel like that's how Rogue One felt, though. And so
he didn't like Rogue One either.
I was just going to say, I feel like, I was just going to say, I feel
did he like The Last Jedi?
He liked it okay. He didn't like.
Well, I think I've said this before. Rogue One is my favorite Star Wars movie.
So
and
good.
I feel like, I don't know. I feel like that's fair. If it's not for you, it's not for you. But I feel like if you like Rogue One, you probably
I love it.
Yeah. I think if you like Rogue One, this show is right up your alley. But I mean, that's what's so great about what we're getting from, people have a lot of critiques with Disney and the directions they go. But I mean, this is some amazing Star Wars and great stories that we're getting that we never would have had without Disney doing this. So it's like you take the good with the bad, and sometimes the good is good and sometimes the good is great.
We're just reaching. I mean, of course, Lindsay, I'm not speaking for you at all, but 3 old men like us who grew up, with 3 Star Wars movies for a good portion of our lives. We're having to come to terms with it's growing exponentially beyond that. And and this is something that Mike has already decided. There's going to be some Star Wars that's not for you.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually there's going to be so much of it that you're just going to have to start saying, okay, I don't like this, but I do like this. And I think that's just the nature of how things are going to be, going forward.
Yeah.
I mean,
when Disney took over Star Wars and then started coming out with new movies, and then when they started streaming shows, is when I realized that Star Wars and new Star Wars material will outlive us.
Yeah.
Probably. Yeah. And that's just something that we'll have to get used to. And some people are still getting used to it. I mean, I don't like the fact that I didn't love Kenobi, and I wish it had been better.
Mm-hmm.
That supercut was nice, though.
Yeah, and if anybody who hasn't seen the supercut, was an improvement.
It was.
It was the movie cut of the TV series.
It was very good comparatively.
I'm for the most part, I think Andor is a very quality show. And I'm very excited to see where it goes, especially in the coming episodes and to the next season, which I guess is coming in 2024. They're going to start. They're starting. They're shooting season. Excuse me. They're shooting season 2 starting next month in November of 2022.
Oh wow! Okay.
So, and of course, we've got Mando season 3 right around the corner, which again, like I said, if Andor is too serious and real world for you, I think the stuff Favreau and Filoni are doing are more of the George Lucasian Star Wars, which is action, adventure, and fun and
fantasy and
very broad stroke, epic storytelling. That's the kind of stuff we're going to get from Mando and probably Ahsoka, which is also coming next year. So I think there's a lot to look forward to.
And I still feel. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead. I was going to say, Lindsay, if there's something in your notes that we did not hit on.
I did have a lot of notes. I was just gonna say, we kind of addressed this. I was saying it did feel more like it does feel more like a sci-fi show than a science fantasy show. Like, I don't know what, like it just feels like I feel like we taught like distance doesn't really matter in Star Wars, fuel doesn't normally really matter. This feels like a show where like distance matters, like timing matters, like the science of how everything, except med packs, just give him a med spike.
Yeah.
Like, what is even in
Although I did like Nemec's little Polaroid camera.
I know, his
that he had, like,
astrolab thingy.
Yeah, that was kind of a cool, but that to me felt very Star Wars. It's like this old school piece of equipment that can help you navigate a starship. And that felt like Star Wars to me.
It's got like the Star Wars. It still feels like Star Wars, even though we're saying it could be anything.
It's like it's the used future piece, you know. It's like it's like used futuristic. It's not like it's not.
Well, you showed me those notes earlier, and I was like, it'd be a shame if we somehow glossed over some of those.
I think we got to most of it. I think I wrote it all down just to remember to say everything that I wanted to say. Music, really good. That's one thing.
Yeah, the music's really good. And to not hit any of those, kind of original trilogy notes, it's a strong soundtrack.
I think just a lot about how, I think the only thing that we kind of talked about it maybe was how it feels like Cassian is a lot like Jyn was at the beginning of Rogue One. Like they have very similar, like the speech that like Nemec is giving to Cassian feels a lot like the speech that Cassian later gives to her when she just feels like she's not doing the rebellion for the right reasons.
Yeah. So we're 5 years out from Rogue One here.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When did Jyn get abandoned by Saw?
She was 16?
She was, she said 15 years old. He abandoned her.
She couldn't have been
How
much
old is
older.
she in Rogue One?
It's probably around this time.
I was just wondering if maybe you see like a little Easter egg of Jyn.
I want to so bad, but I don't know
well,
if it would work.
I will see. I mean, Tony Gilroy, who's the showrunner and who basically crafted Rogue One, he said that he's not going to be doing that. But look, there's going to be Rogue One Easter eggs.
By the way, speaking of Easter eggs,
but
speaking of Easter eggs, I keep sending Jared all these videos. If you slow down and freeze frame in Luthen's shop,
I've seen this.
There are a billion.
Did you see the Sankara stones from Temple of Doom?
I need to go back and look at this.
It's hilarious, and they're bringing back. Apparently, there's some stuff that's from Star Wars Legends that's in there that's now made canon because of it. There's all kinds of fun stuff.
He talks about something that happened in Knights of the Old Republic. The Ratican armor.
Yes,
that's from Knights of the Old Republic.
Yeah,
I oh my god, that made me so happy. I'm like, so the game is canon.
I want a whole
again?
list. I want a whole list of what's in his shop. I want somebody to make a list.
I'm sure it's already made. You just have to Google it.
Yeah.
So, but gang, I think we're gonna wrap it here, and we will all four reconvene. I'd like to do maybe 2 more shows before. Like, let's do another one and then do one after the finale.
I think
that's the segments of 3 going with that. I think sounds good because I feel like there's so much that happened.
Yeah,
I guess not as much, but
that sounds great.
Okay, so we'll bring you a few more episodes of the Cassian Chronicles this season with the Collector Brian and of course our friend Lindsay, and maybe Matt will show up.
Thanks for having us on.
I'm gonna work on my background.
Of course.
Yeah, no, guys, the Hyperspace is always happy to have you guys on board and as friends of the podcast. And guys, every Monday we're dropping episodes, so it's not the Cassian Chronicles. We got a regular episode happening next week after this, but this week we thought it'd be a little special. So thanks for listening and thanks for watching if you watch this on YouTube, and we will see you guys in the future.
You know you can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us here next time as we take you into the 25th century.